Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Asif Lalji. Welcome to the next live session of Avid Online. And for those joining us for the first time, a special welcome to you. Please refer to the chat box for more information about Avid Learning and our platform. Avid Online is our innovative digital further learning campaign that was launched during the lockdown. In fact, on the 1st of this month, we celebrated our 1-year anniversary of online programming and engagement. So now, a little over a year old and 250 programs later, we can say that although 2020 challenged us in unprecedented ways, we managed to stay positive, relevant, engaged, and engaging. We have to continue to champion and bring to our audiences the very best of arts and culture while supporting the creative communities and facilitating growth dialogue within the arts ecosystem. 2021 is shaping to be a transformative year. However, whether we continue online, transition to physical events, or hybrid mix of both, we stay true to our mantra that learning never stops. And this brings me to our evening session, Painted Delight, Introduction to Indian Miniature Painting, a fascinating live session that delves into this distinctly beautiful art form led by Professor Suresh Chabria. Welcome, Professor. For more about him,
Hello.
please refer to his impressive bio, which has been posted in the chat section. In this session, Professor Chabria will introduce a few of the most important schools of Indian miniature or book painting and comment on their subject, themes, and artistry through a visual presentation, which will feature several beautiful and exquisite paintings. On that note, thank you once again for signing in. Over to you, Professor, and look forward to a fascinating session.
Thank you, Asad. Well, I must thank Avid Learning Online for giving me this opportunity to share this evening with you with some paintings from the great tradition of Indian miniature art. About the painted Indian image, number of choice and pithy expressions have been coined over the decades. I'll quote some of them. First is Painted Delight, which I have borrowed from Stella Kramrisch from her catalogue of an exhibition held in Philadelphia in 1986, dedicated to Shiva. Another one is A Layered World. Professor B.N. Goswami has a chapter with that title, talking about the spirit of Indian painting. A Better World. This rapturous phrase is from Joan Cummins in her introduction to the Boston collection of Indian miniatures. And this one from Stuart Cary Welch, Room for Wonder. So these rapturous phrases have been inspired by Indian miniature painting, and I have selected about 30 examples of Indian miniature painting which appeal greatly to me, and I'll be talking about them one by one. And as Asad mentioned, there can be questions and answers coming in, and I will try to answer them towards the end in the short time given. So, first of all, a couple of remarks. The expression Indian miniature painting, of course, it's borrowed from the West, where there was a tradition of illustrated books where the illustrations were called miniatures. In India, the size of the painting can change from about postcard size of 6x4 to 2-3 feet in height, and even the scrolls, which are much longer. So strictly, they were illustrations in manuscripts. So many scholars prefer to call it book painting. I will use the word Indian miniature painting, phrase Indian miniature painting throughout, because that is commonly accepted and used by everyone. And the medium in which most of these pictures are painted is gouache, thick watercolor, with gold and silver embellishments. Most of them, the pictures that we are going to see, are on paper, which of course came to India quite late in the 14th century or so. Before that, Indian manuscripts were on palm leaf from the teleport plant, which was horizontally very long, but the images would be very, very small. That's sort of by way of telling you what is the kind of materials this medium uses. So let's start by looking at the pictures. The first one is, in fact, a very early picture from the 12th century from a monastery in Bengal. Um, uh, let's have the first slide. This is by a painter who's now referred to as the Mahavira master. Mahavira is can be translated as just monastery. The understanding of the subject, this is a Mahayana text, and these are very small illustrations in them. As I explained, palm leaf didn't have much in height to fill in, so this is about 2 inches each way. But it's exquisite. Each painting shows that the painter knew what he was really dealing with. And in this particular painting, this is the goddess Green Tara dispensing boons. The Mahavira master shows his great skills in line, shading, and color, which is very reminiscent of the Ajanta wall paintings. As everyone knows, the great wall painting tradition, the mural tradition, fresco tradition, call it whichever, is largely lost. Ajanta has some remnants and a few other sites in India and then in Sri Lanka and of course the influence extended to the Buddhist lands beyond, right up to China and Japan. You see the continuity between Ajanta and this kind of painting from the Mahavira master. This Green Tara with a wonderful golden aureole, with multi-hued devotees surrounding her. The bearded, sadhu-like man is amazing in his floating grace, as indeed is the decoration, all the garlands and ornaments that she is wearing. So she is the goddess of wisdom, who takes us across the ocean of life. So this is somewhere in the 12th century from a monastery in Bengal. Next, let's have the next slide. This is a wonderful picture from the Bhagavad Puran, known as the Palam Bhagavata Puran, because it was found in Palam near Delhi. It's the pre-Mughal style, Mughal painting changed book with oratory, but this is which was there in the Sultanate period before Mughal rule was established. This is dated normally 1525 to. It is also known as the Nana Mitha or Sanana Mitha Bhagavat, because these two names appear on many of the folios. They are not the artists, but perhaps the people who own this manuscript. Also known as, amusingly, the Scotch tape Bhagavat Puran, because many of the 200 existing folios of this manuscript had Scotch tape to firm them up. So this is an incident from the 10th chapter of the Bhagavad Puran, which deals with Krishna's childhood, and it is Krishna subdues Srinivartha, the whirlwind demon. If you look at the picture carefully, Krishna appears twice. He's at the bottom right with his mother Yashoda, assuring her that all is well. And he's also seen at the top of the picture on the right, combating this flame-shaped, amazing green, yellow, and black combination. The whirlwind is represented, the demon is represented in an elemental form, and the child Krishna is combating him up there. So he's in two places, at the bottom with his mother and up there fighting. So this kind of continuous narration is a hallmark of Hindu painting. And it continues for centuries, right up to the 18th century, the heyday of the miniature painting. I could spend a lot of time talking about works like this. The sheer devotion and belief and internalization of the story of Krishna that such a page reveals is amazing. The gopis, some of them very concerned, others already aware that he has triumphed. Even the tree on the left bending towards Krishna. The whole page is imbued with a fantastic spirit of devotion. Every page that one sees from this manuscript, as I said, almost 200 folios have survived, has this great intensity of feeling, and of course the colors are amazing. The architecture with one place a red background, another place with a green background, the walls behind, the torans hanging. Let's look at the text. So I was pointing out the toran, the transparent odni, that Yashoda is wearing, the exquisite skirt that she's wearing, pattern, the textile pattern. And one of the pleasures of looking at Indian miniature painting is, like in European traditions too, is to look at the clothes people are wearing, the garments, the drapery as it is called. Wonderful is the transparent, virtually transparent odni and her ornaments again. Let's move on to the next slide. This is a Ragmala painting from the Chunar Ragmala, painted 1591. Because the colophon exists, we know about who painted it, where it was painted. This was painted in Chunar for the king of Benares. And it's a wonderful fusion of Rajput and Mughal painting. The masters responsible for this set were trained in the Mughal atelier. Their services were perhaps lent for a short time to the Maharaja of Bundi, who was very close to Emperor Akbar, who was reigning emperor in Agra and Delhi at that time. This is a very distinct genre of Indian traditions. Ragmala translates as garland of ragas, and the attempt is to kind of visualize the raga. So this raga is Madhumadhavi Ragini, in fact. As I said, from the Chunar Ragmala, the Nayaka, the heroine, let's move to the detail, is in the portico of a pavilion with an empty bed, and she is waiting for her lover. The empty bed is suggestive of that, and in the meantime, she is feeding a peacock with pearls. Let's look at the detail. Here we are. It's wonderful. Again, the costume, the intricate work on the ornaments, and sheer alankar, sheer decoration. Even more exquisite, in my opinion, is the way the monsoon sky and rain is depicted. Its turbulence, its monsoon. The peacocks are singing, and she is waiting. Her sense of expectation heightened by the empty chamber that she is next to. Very great series of painting, of which about 20 or 25 exist in different parts of the world. This is from the Mittal collection, Jagdish Mittal collection in Hyderabad. Next. Wow. This is a Ragmala painting. This one is painted on cloth. It was an album of paintings which have been separated and can be seen individually now. This is in a private collection in India. It's from Orissa, Two Lovers, it has been titled. B.N. Goswami, professor, the great professor who I think of as a guru, has a wonderful phrase, a sentence about this painting, that it's about, the painting is about the rhythm of the body and the mind. The line, the thoughts of the two lovers is exquisitely captured by this Orissan painter. The two are dressed as if they were dancers and they're striking a pose. And again, on the amber bodies, the clothes, on the bare chest of the Nayak, the hero, the ornaments, the sneaking garlands in their hair. These are the kind of details, if one looks at them and notices them, one begins to get the true rasa of Indian miniature art. Let's look at a detail of this now. The Nayaka, we'll see him in close-up. Next. There you are. What a pose he's striking. This almost Burmese or Thai type of headgear that he's wearing. But of course, for me, the most striking thing is his switch of hair and the snaking, as I said, garlands, multicolored flowers in his, that he's wearing in his headdress. Exquisite picture, full of alamkar again. The decoration, the Indian artists, usually, particularly the Hindu artists, were used to temple worship and decorating the deity, and that's what they did to the figures in their paintings as well. We look at one more Ragmala painting. Next. This is about the Two Lovers was about painted around the 1700s, somewhere in the 18th, perhaps even early 19th century. This one is actually not a Ragmala painting, I correct myself. This is Abhisarika Nayaka, painted in Mankot by a great master at the court of Mankot around 1700. The Abhisarika Nayaka is one of the 8 heroines which were categorized in the Rasika Priya of Keshav Das. The heroine is stepping out in the night to meet her lover, obviously an illicit tryst that she's headed for. Inspired is the way the rain is depicted. And when we look at the close-up, you will the detail, you will notice that she's parting the rain as if it was a curtain of beads. Before we look at the detail, look at the snake around her ankle. It symbolizes all the difficulties she will face or she is facing going to meet her lover. Now we look at the detail, please. Next. There you are. She seems to be parting the rain, asking it to allow her to pass through. I would like you to particularly note the strands of hair which come from her head down over her bosom and on as far as her waist. Brushes of different thickness, maybe even a single squirrel's hair, were used to produce these different strands of hair. It's an exquisite line. It's an exquisite mastery over the brush. And of course, as always with such art, the colors, blue, yellow, the pink of her flesh, her face, and of course the black hair, the red gagra she's wearing, and the black sky behind with the beads of rain, almost like pearls, and of course the lotus-shaped eye, greatly favored in Sanskrit aesthetics as a mark of beauty in women. So Abhisarika Nayaka from the master at the court of Mankot, painted around 1700 in the Pahari region. This is a Pahari painting. Next. This is a Ragmala painting. It is from Bundelkhand, perhaps Orcha, perhaps Datia. The style used to be called the Malwa style, Central Indian style of painting. It has more of a folkish air, for sure, not less courtly, but where it lacks perhaps somewhere in some of the finish and refinement of some of the other paintings that we are going to see and we have already seen. This has an amazing simplicity, which is almost modern. The way that the different colored trees are shown with creepers of flowers and birds on them. The sheer freedom with which the exuberant nature around is depicted. This is the Kakuba Ragini. The iconography is that she's with two garlands of flowers, which of course will be used during the lovemaking. The lovers will garland each other, and there are two peacocks with her. That's part of the iconography of the Kakuba Ragini. And the amazing red behind her, an arch of red, signifying the bower in which the meeting will happen, and it is contrasted after a single rim of white with the black of the sky. I mean, these kind of contrasts of saturated black and red is very, very appealing to our modern taste. I'm reminded of certain juxtapositions of these colors in the Spanish artist Joan Miro, for example. We'll look at a detail here also. Next. Here the red and other aspects details can be noticed. There are individual brown or amber golden leaves falling around her. Around her is exuberance of nature, but her face is glum. She's wondering whether he will turn up at all. And here the two garlands that she's holding in her hands, unused, assume a new meaning. And again, notice the wonderful way in which the artist has depicted her clothes, the semi-transparent blackish odni that she's wearing all around her, wrapped around her, and how the colors melt into one another and change wherever the odni is absent. Exquisite is this sense of expectancy that this painting has captured, and perhaps that this is not going to happen, that this tryst will not happen. It's that those emotions are captured in the face of the Ragini, Kakuba Ragini from Bundelkhand, about I would say 1645 or 1650. This is from another great text from the Bhanudatta's Rasamanjari, which classifies the different kinds of Nayakas and Nayaks. This is the Vasaka Saja heroine waiting for her lover, painted by Kripal of Nurpur, probably 1660 to 1670. This kind of style of Pahari painting, of the late 17th and early 18th century is broadly known as the Basoli style. But we know that this artist Kripal came from Nurpur, not far from Basoli. Again, here there are far too many details, but I would just simply point out a few of them. The empty bed again, the white sheet, the garland and the bolsters set off against the flaming red wall behind with its niches and the hanging garlands there. But the spotlight and the sheer floral extravagance of the whole painting, in the carpet, in the stucco work on the arch at the entrance and the doorway, the architecture. This takes one's breath away. This is amazing. But as we go into the detail, we see more clearly the face of the heroine. Next, this exquisite way in which her hair is like a storm of expectancy. Her clothes are in movement, as like her hair, and in her eyes, again the lotus-shaped eyes. There's very great expectancy. In these paintings, the emeralds and ornaments, it's not clear from this reproduction, were done in a shiny beetle wing encrustation. And when the painting is held in one's hand as it was meant to be originally, and one turns it a bit, these jewels spread over the heroine, begin to sparkle. It's an amazing set of Rasamanjari paintings painted by Kripal of Nurpur. Let's move on to the next one. Another great painting from the Pahari region. This is probably, I'm certain of it, but there are no inscriptions to say it categorically. This is painted by Devidas, also of Nurpur, who's the son of Kripal, whose painting we just saw, the Vasakasaja heroine waiting for her lover. This is it's a visionary picture. It's Shiva and Parvati on the elephant skin are soaring above the sky. So this is a painted version of what is known as the Gajasuravada Murti. Shiva, after he has skinned the elephant demon, and he's now floating on his skin. Quite often he's shown wearing the skin on his shoulders. He's holding up this sword as if it was the pillar which is holding up the world. And amazing is, and what worlds these are, that the painter has imagined. This dream-like world, this world which actually gives the visual form, perhaps to a shloka describing, dhyana shloka describing the vision of Shiva and Parvati. The clouds swirling around again, the multicolored trees, the flying birds. This is just kind of painting which inspires the rapture I was talking about earlier, the painted delight of Indian miniature art. We'll have a look at the detail of the trees and the clouds and the birds now. Next. Let's go to the detail. Here you are. It's Monsoon again, great favorite of Indian painters, and particularly in the Hindu courts, and the way the flying cranes, Saras cranes, are depicted: three flying off, one or two about to fly off, and the multicolored trees. It's an amazing kind of freedom of color and brushwork that is so great. the dark streak across the top of this detail perhaps represents lightning, and the image is full of these sounds of rain, lightning, thunder, and movement. Great picture, soaring, visionary picture. Next. This is from a Dasavatar series from Chamba, probably painted for the Raja, his patron, around 1700. Vishnu's Narasimha avatar, a painting of great visual power, and as a iconic work, it perhaps could stand for all Hindu art, sculpture and painting that we know. The pillar splits, Narasimha, the lion man avatar of Vishnu emerges, grabs Hiranyakashipu and disembowels him. The price of his arrogance and pride. And amazing is the choice of the clothes which the dying demon is shown with black and dark blackish stripes with white, which match the skin of the and the colors of the fur of Narasimha. So there is this dialogue, an affinity between the two, Narasimha and his adversary. Narasimha is shown with the chakra, the conch, some of the iconographic identification marks of Vishnu, and amazing is the face of Narasimha, inspired perhaps by the Kashmiri bronze in the Brahmor temple not far from Chamba town, about 50 kilometers away. Let's look at the detail of the face of Narasimha here. Next. Magnificent mane, the brushwork with gold and yellow put into it, and the scorpion-like tongue protruding from Narasimha's mouth, and he's already garlanded himself with the entrails of Hiranyakashipu, and the purplish pillar splitting behind him, the chakra in one of his claws, and it's one of the great, in my opinion, paintings of Hindu art or iconic images. The next one is the emergence of Varaha from a Bhagavata Puran manuscript of about 1740 from Guler, painted by Manaku of Guler, very, very great painter, whose younger brother Nansuk, as great as him, if not greater, we are going to talk about in a short while. The world has been cast in this evil spell by the other similar sounding name of the demon Hiranyakash. The chakra of that he holds up, Varaha, the boar incarnation of Vishnu, amazingly depicted, as indeed is the very strong and pillar-like, rock-like stance of Varaha, raining down our serpents and daggers and stones and rocks, and bones are spread everywhere. People are running away, demons as well as rishis and semi-mythical creatures and ghouls. A very, very great picture. I have selected one more picture from this series, which we will quickly see and move on. Let's look at the detail first. Next. The cows behind, running to from the great emergence of Varaha. Next. Let's look at the next slide. Almost, if memory serves me right, in this manuscript there are 14 or 15 illustrations which succeed each other, like successive frames from a film or blocks from a comic book, which illustrate this titanic battle between Varaha and his adversary. Much remarked about is the way the waters around, the ocean around is depicted, whirlpools and eddies, almost rings of time, as Bian Goswami ji has said, depicted here. The battle will go on for a very long time, and the ocean itself is the ocean of time. Beautiful is the lotus in one of the hands of Varaha. But we'll not dwell on too many details now. Let's move on to the next one. Next slide, please. This is one of the blockbusters of Mughal art, Mughal painting, from the great Hamzanama series commissioned by Akbar early in his reign in the 1560s. And this project took several years to complete, perhaps up to the mid-70s, 1570s. 1,400 large paintings on cloth were commissioned, the size about 2.5 feet by 1.5, 2 feet. Only about 150 to 70 paintings exist from this. It was this was one of the, part of the loot of Nadir Shah when he looted Delhi, and the Afghan Nadir Shah, the Persian Nadir Shah looted Delhi in 1739. But let's look at the picture itself. This depicts the Ayar, the spy, Umar, slaying a dragon. There are pits in the earth, from one of which Umar is standing up to the left, and a dragon is emerging from another one, flaming from all his body and particularly his mouth. And Umar has his raised hand, and he's got a ball of naphtha, something like a grenade, we would say today, which he will throw at the dragon and vanquish it. People behind the rocks, and these multicolored rocks come from Persian painting, and in Persian painting itself, this came from China, Chinese art, and in the architecture, typically Mughal. People are looking, and the orchestra is, the musicians are already announcing the triumph over the dragon. In the detail, we look at the dragon more carefully. These are each one of these Hamzanama page folios that one can see in different collections in the world. This one is in Vienna at the MAC. Takes one's breath away. I mean, the sheer flamboyance, inventiveness, and color of figure, and variety of figures and expressions. Very detailed study can it rewards. It's an amazing achievement of the Mughal atelier at that time. This one, it is attributed to Daswant and Tara, two painters collaborating with one another. So let's look at the detail of the dragon. Next. It has often been described as one of the greatest, if not the greatest, painted dragon in Islamic art. There is a whole range of great dragons painted in China, of course, including the legendary master who would just swallow paint and then spit it out on his paper, and a dragon would emerge. So in China, there's a very great tradition of dragon painting, but so too, perhaps to a lesser extent, but equally brilliant in Persian art. And here you can see an example of something derived from Persian art, but given an energy and life that is the essence really of the revolution that Mughal art produced in Indian visual art. Great is every single detail, the way the flames and the snout of the dragon, the different colors in the background. It's the rings that form the cavities in the earth. This is extraordinary. This is great work. Next. And this is the man who brought about this great revolution in painting in India. It's a sketch, a drawing of Emperor Akbar from a notebook. This page, there are two other sketches on small folio. Here we see Akbar divested of all royal trappings, with his eyes looking downward, perhaps reading, perhaps meditating. What an expression! What a noble head, as someone has said. And he has all the qualities that one expects of the man who had achieved so much, the kingly qualities, but also a sort of humility about him, which will particularly come through in the detail we are going to see of the face now. The next slide, please. The next slide. Akbar, in his later years, the sagging skin, the sideburns, simple turban, and he has all the marks that Abul Fazl, his biographer in the Ain Akbari, said about a king, that he's devoted to his mission, that he is concerned about the state of affairs around. He's also a man of spirituality. That's the way Akbar is shown here, and I have no doubt that the artist who did this drawing had observed Akbar very, very closely. Normally, we see him in hundreds of paintings. That's 4 or 5 Akbar namas to look at him, always more heroic and royal regalia. But here we see him as a simple man working at home, like all of us are these days. Next. Another great painting, Mughal painting, a scribe, an old scribe, copying text from one book, a codex, to another. He's crouched in a way that is beautifully captured. This is probably by Bijapur, one of the great Mughal artists of that time, around 1625 or so the scholars believe. This is the squint of his eyes, the posture in which he's sitting. This man has been doing this kind of work all his lifetime, and his whole body and his person have been captured in this portrait with great affection. And this is one of the hallmarks of Mughal painting, that it brought in realistic portraiture to Indian painting. Before this, there would be, kind of iconic representations of rulers and people, some kind of stereotypical with certain traits highlighted. But looking into the soul of the person, as we say, that a portrait does, this came in with Akbar particularly. He wanted pictures of all his courtiers so that he knew their character, and continued portraiture continued to be, of course, a prime subject for depicting the emperor himself, but also of others. There are self-portraits to be found in Mughal art, and this particular painting is a great favorite of mine. Let's look at the detail, the face of the scribe, the old scribe, immortalized really. We don't know who he is, immortalized by Vichitra, a face that is unforgettable. It reminds us that painting at this minute scale and doing calligraphic work, which was equally important in Islamic courts, the eyesight would of course suffer, and as the artists grew older, a number of them had very poor eyes or just went almost blind. We'll run short of time if we continue to dwell on so much detail, so I carry on. Let's see the next one, the next painting. This is one of the most famous paintings of all Indian art, Mughal art in particular. Jahangir preferring a Sufi sheikh to kings. Look at it carefully. It's an allegorical picture. It's full of symbols. Jahangir is seated on a European-designed throne, which is the base of which is an hourglass through which the sands of time are passing, and two angels borrowed from Western art are scooping up the sands, the grains of sand which is time which has passed, and they're scooping them and putting them back to signify that Jahangir's rule, the conqueror of the world, that's what Jahangir means, or the Caesar of the world, that's what his name means. His fame, at least, if not his rule, will last forever. His nimbus, or the halo behind him, is made of the sun and the moon. How much more propagandistic or assertive could that be? But the subject is amazing. Jahangir says in his own diary, the Jahangir Nama, that though he met kings and aristocracy, he always preferred the company of the saints, whether Hindu or Islamic. So there are four figures on the left. There is a Sufi, Sheikh Hussain, from a descendant of Muinuddin Chishti of Ajmer, Dargah to which Akbar had gone to ask for the birth of a male heir, which turned out to be Salim, and Salim, as when he ascended the throne, took the name of Jahangir. Below him is the Ottoman Sultan, the Sultan of Turkey. Further below is James I of England, and he's preferring the Sufi sheikh by presenting him a ceremonial manuscript which the saint the sheikh is accepting in his pallu, as something important and sacred given to me by the emperor himself. And right at the bottom, the fourth figure on the left, is a self-portrait by Vichitra, and he's holding up a painting that he's working on. In the detail which we will see next, we will see what a synthesis of art traditions is there. There are Western style drolleries in the carpet. The European design is evident in the way the paint, in the hourglass, the angels, um, uh, true to character are painted. The Sultan, the Sheikh, and King James, and the more modestly dressed artist artist himself. But amazing is the costume of Jahangir himself in fine muslin. As we say, woven with air. It's exquisite in every detail. This is quite rightly, I think, considered a pinnacle of Indian painting and Mughal art in particular. We have to hurry, so let's go to the next one. A nature study by Ustad Mansoor, painted around 1610 perhaps, peafowl. This is not a pretty picture. If one looks closely at the expressions of the two peacocks, one of them, the male, has a worm or a small snake in its beak, and the peahen is glancing at him with great envy. Mansoor's paintings of flowers and animals and birds mark him out as the greatest natural study painter, one of the greatest natural study painters in the world. I don't have enough time to dwell on more details of these paintings now. We'll have to move forward fast. So let's just look at the detail of the peacock. Next. Next, please. Here is the peacock, completely aware. It's obviously, Mansoor has gone out and studied his subject well. It's not just done sitting in a studio and stereotypical. He's captured the awareness of the peacock that the peahen is after his catch. Wonderful, of course, is the coloring of the neck of the peacock. Indian artists always did exceedingly well with elephants and peacocks for obvious reasons. Next. Next, please. To my mind, again, one of the greatest of all paintings from anywhere in the world, Farooq Beg's Old Sufi, as it is titled now. This is an adaptation from European print. The original is Saint Jerome in his study by Albrecht Dürer, the great Renaissance German artist. A Flemish version, or maybe a Dutch version of it, was done by Martin de Vos around 1600. And both these sources may have certainly in one or the other, perhaps the Martin de Vos version, reached the Mughal court along with the embassies which came from Europe at that time to the Mughal court, asking for concessions of trade. And a number of Mughal versions of these prints were made. The Mughal emperors, both Akbar and Jahangir, greatly admired Western art, and their artists lived up to the expectation and captured the principles of Western art, but also bent them to their own purposes. Here, the old Sufi, in the image of Saint Jerome, sits in his wicker chair, European in design, in his study. Milk has spilt in his cupboard. Instead of the lion, which is Jerome's sign, he has lambs and a tame dog and cat around him. And this great tree behind him, with these cabbage-like shapes, multicolored leaves, with a few birds. It's almost a visual, it is a visual metaphor of his thoughts. The kind of mystic thoughts and thinking that must be going through the Sufi's mind. We will look at two details of this next. Please, next. We'll see two details of this amazing painting by Farooq Beg. Painted as an inscription on the painting itself says when he was 70 in 1615. So here are those amazing cabbage-shaped leaves and birds in the tree above the old Sufi. And now we go to his face itself. Next. Next, please. Dhwani, next detail.
I've changed the slide, Professor. Maybe because of internet, you must not be seeing it. Can you see it now?
Yeah, so it's appeared now. It's appeared now. What a face! What can I say? The flaming hair, the blue cap that he's wearing, the beard, and those eyes which are looking nowhere and everywhere. He's deep in thought. Exquisite picture. One of, in my opinion, the greatest pictures ever painted anywhere in the world. Next. Next, we see from another Muslim court from the Deccan this time, Sultan Ibrahim Adil Shah II of Bijapur, painted around 1610 or 1615. Ibrahim Adil Shah II was, in his own right, a very great patron, like Jahangir, his contemporary, or Akbar before. And he wrote a book called the Kitab-i-Nawras on music. And the opening pages pay tribute to Saraswati and to the Prophet Muhammad. He was a great, as he's called, the reconciler of faiths. And here he is in a garden with clappers in his hand, humming or singing, his rumal in his hand, which is the sign of the ruler in Dakkani art, his patka and utariya swaying, and his jama, transparent jama, swaying to a unheard music, unheard baja jo hum kehte hain. The painting is full of the mystical quality that Deccani art is famous for. Let's go to the next slide. Sorry, I have to hurry now. You see his sensitive face. Perhaps the painter has flattered him, but there are a number of portraits of Ibrahim Adil Shah from very young age to about this age later in his life. And they all reveal a man of very great refinement, sensitivity, and self-awareness, and involvement with the arts, with spiritual aspects of art. As I said, even the capital, he was a great musician himself, and the capital he had planned, which was partly built, was called the Navras. He was going to move it from Bijapur to a place, to a site nearby. A very great patron, a very great, perhaps not a very great successful ruler, but a very great patron of music and literature and indeed painting. Next. This painting is all luxury, also from the Jagdish Mittal collection in Hyderabad. I'm showing the whole album page in which the painting is inset with calligraphy on all four sides, verses written by a great ustad of calligraphy, maybe more than one. And this is the yogini with a veena, standing yogini with a veena, a woman of aristocratic or even royal background who has abandoned the world and is roaming around, leading a life of a wanderer, perhaps she's just wearing a costume. This is what she aspires to leave the material world behind and dedicate herself to contemplation and music. The Yogini paintings are one of the hallmarks of, this is from Bijapur, of Bijapuri painting. You know, there are about 20 or 25 of them in different collections in the world. Each painting saturated with this kind of mystic atmosphere. Next, we look at only the painting now. Great luxury, as I said, overflows from this, ironically, this subject of a yogini. Wonderful hairdo, the feathers, the great veena and a chakdar jama, the four-ended jama she's wearing. And of course the golden sky behind with the architecture and the minaret and the foliage around her, the bushes and flowers around her. You know, they mean much more than what can meet the eye on a superficial glance. These are expressions of the inner feelings. Nature here is the expression of the inner feelings of the subject, the yogini. Next. Ananda Kumarasamy, the great pioneer who introduced Rajput art or Rajasthani and Pahari art to the world, used to say that this kind of painting has a singing line. This is a cartoon for a wall painting by Sahib Ram of Jaipur, painted around 1800, and the title given to it these days, in the role of Krishna. So it's a woman who is dressed as Krishna and taking part in a Ras Leela. So this is a drawing, and with only some details filled in, particularly the hair and her turban. But the line and the snaking strands of hair on either side of her hair, the pearls, the wonderful boss and feathers on her turban, the aigrette that she's wearing, and that pose she has struck. It produces elation in one to see works like this. Sahib Ram's work, and again the lotus-shaped eyes. Sahib Ram's work is one of the most joyous works, whether it was the royal portraits or women at their toilets, or in this case, cross-dressed as Krishna. His is one of, I think, the loveliest and most joyous bodies of work in the whole tradition of Indian miniature painting. We'll move on to the next one, because we have 8 or 10 pictures left and we are running out of time. Maybe we have almost run out of time. This is by Nansukh of Guler. Nansukh has painted his patron Balwan Singh of Jasrota, a minor prince, worshipping Radha and Krishna. He's not, and Radha and Krishna on the throne are not shown as statues, but as if in flesh. This is a vision which has an encounter which is actually happening in the material world. This vision has come true. The spare simplicity of the colors, the white, very prominent, and there's much to be admired in Nansukh. I don't have the time to really go into more detail here. We'll just look at a detail now and then pass on to two more paintings. Note the pendant that he's wearing. Number of paintings of Nansuk, of his patron. He was like a court painter. He painted his fantasies, he painted his hunts, he painted him in relaxed moods, writing a letter. He painted him with his barber. Often he's wearing something, a pendant like this, and in the next painting we will see, next to next painting we will see, this will become important. Let's move on to the next one quickly. Nansuk alone. I mean, this is one of the unique pictures in Indian painting, where you see a prince at a window alone. Gone are the fantasies of power or the signs of royalty. He's alone. This is a painting of utter loneliness. It's a drawing rather of utter loneliness. We look at a detail and carry on. Very rare in Indian painting is this kind of close-up, en face, looking at a person straight, face to face. Next, there you are. He had a difficult life. He wanted much more authority and power, but he came from a junior branch of the Jammu royal family and lost a lot of money and his power to his rivals. And here we see him alone, painted by Nansuk in one of the most private moments ever captured in by an Indian artist. Next. Next, please. Here we see a portable shrine with the remains of Balwan Singh. In my opinion, this is one of the greatest pictures about death that has ever been painted, because what we have in front is a portable shrine which has an urn in it, and one of the kind of pendants that Balwant Singh wore in his portraits is hanging there. Inside are his urns. Inside it is the urn with his ashes. He was cremated, and his ashes were brought to Haridwar. Nansuk, his friend and court painter, painted this scene set in a screen, and the two escorts with their morchals, peacock feathers, fanning over him. It's one of the greatest depictions. Again, to quote Goswamiji, what lies beyond the tent is the great beyond, where we are all headed. Next. Next, please. A detail of the shrine with Vaishnavite symbols, the pendant, and a garland and a conch and so on. Very, in my opinion, tragic picture, full of a sense of loss. Next. Two more romantic subject. One of the greatest sets of paintings ever made in India. Jayadeva's Gita Govinda was painted several times in the Pahari region, perhaps at no time better than this one, painted by the workshop which Nansuk and Manaku and their father Pandit Seu. This is by the generation after Nansuk. Krishna and Radha are on the banks of the Yamuna. She's pointing in one direction. That's the way they're supposed to go home. Krishna is, however, persuading her to stay with him in the forest for a night of romance and lovemaking. The starlit sky, the entwining trees around, everything. It's a great nocturnal scene in which only the two figures are lit. Everything around them is suggesting that going home to is not the right thing to do now. We look at the detail. Next. this is such a great painting that I'm sorry that I have to rush through in the dark night among those darkened trees and shadows. This painter lights up his hero and heroine. And again, the mudras, the gestures are eloquent. Next. From the same set, Jayadeva's vision of Radha and Krishna. Dhwani next. The dazzlingly lit detail we saw in the earlier painting. Here we see Krishna and Radha in full daylight, and Jayadev singing their praises. And in the Gita Govinda itself, Jayadev brings himself in, and in the detail now we will see it's very lyrical painting. It's full of the singing of Jayadev, the wonderful Sanskrit shlokas or stanzas of Gita Govinda being sung out. In the detail, we will look at Jayadev himself, a great image of a poet, and a great image of belief. I'm waiting for the detail to appear on my screen, and we will carry on. Dhwani? There you are. Satvik to his fingernails and toenails. Amazing portrait, perhaps even a self-portrait of the painter himself as Jayadev. Next. We come to the last 3 or 4 paintings. To cover more schools, as many schools as possible, I have included this painting by Chokha, painted of a sadhu and his devotee, painted in the Thikana of Devgarh, part of Mewar, Udaipur being its capital. Chokha had a preference for fat people. His patrons in Devgarh were enormous, and here he has shown the sadhu in the same way. Again, the swirling cloud, the smoke that comes from the fire which is lit below, the way the lines have now given way to colors blending in a completely different way. A lot of time and evolution has taken place in the work of Chokha and Indian painters by this time. We will have a quick look at the sadhu, who's a Charsi. We can make out from his reddened eyes. Next, please. Next, the detail of the sadhu. And we will go on to, yes, I can see the detail now. There's so much one could talk about. But I have pointed out the eye, and the man is listening. He's all that. Next, we have one more devotional image. This is from Bundi. Next, please. It's one of my favorite pictures. There are a number of great paintings from Bundi and its sister Kota in Kota, but this is one of a minor, but perhaps I like this painting very, very much. Hanuman singing praises of Ram. He's seated in a banana grove, humming a song. This was painted around 1760, perhaps, and the painter has put a lot of visual metaphors again into this painting. The way his tail is like a hooded snake, swaying to music, the movement in the banana grove behind him. Let's go to the detail and notice the lotus pond at the bottom. Even the lotuses seem to be swaying alongside, joining in the humming, in the singing of the Bhakt Hanuman. Next. Let's look at a detail of the banana grove, and we move on there. There's a, you could say dance-like, but very musical in any way, movement of the banana leaves, which are a visual metaphor for Hanuman singing. We'll just have, though we don't have any time probably, we'll just look at two pictures very quickly. The next one is what's called company painting, example of company painting. This is a Saras crane painted for the wife of the Chief Justice in Calcutta, Sir Elijah Impey, in 1780. So Mary Impey commissioned Zainuddin, a Patna-based artist, to do a series of large, almost 2 feet high paintings of birds and fruit and plants. And this is one of the finest, I think. Here, the Indian artist has captured the essence of nature studies as practiced in the West. And Saras crane, as we know, is a great symbol of fidelity. The cranes are always a pair for life and things like that. Exquisite is the fine detail and the imposing look of this tall bird over this very large page. We move to the next one, the last image. This is, you can try and guess, but you'll never guess what it is. These 3 golden chalices, almost, it looks like, in the center. It's a depiction, a very imaginative depiction of Mount Meru in a Bhagavata Puran text from Assam, painted in the 17th or late 17th or late 17th or early 18th century. Mount Meru is in Indian mythology, the center of Jambudvipa, the universe. Around it are these 4 other mountains, petal-shaped, and the land is represented by bands of black and red, and the various kinds of trees are shown in yellow and gold all around it. A work of such modernity and such freedom that it takes one's breath away. This is from an Assamese manuscript, amazingly free and amazingly imaginative. Well, I think I have taken more time than I should have, but I hope this session would have given an adequate introduction to Indian miniature painting, which I have set out to do. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you. I'll wait for the questions now. The first one has been answered already. The material on which the paintings have been painted, it's thick watercolor with a gluey substance in it, which is called gouache, and of course the gold and silver is added on, and the colors were both vegetable and mineral. I will go to the next one. Would you elaborate on some lesser known schools and styles not covered, as well as its techniques, materials, and processes? I selected 28 pictures out of thousands which I know of, and so many schools I have not been able to to include. In the Pahari region itself, there's Bilaspur and there is Arki, and in the Rajasthan, there are a number of styles, Marwar, and I've not been able to. I mean, this could be adequately covered in a long course of several lectures, but today's was meant to be a basic introduction. Shall I go to the next one? What is the role of calligraphy and the melding of graphic, textual, and painterly styles in this tradition? Very essential, particularly in the Islamic paintings, painted manuscripts. The text and the images illustrating the text. I mean, the text are of at least two kinds. The accounts, the historical accounts of the reigns of Akbar and Jahangir or Shah Jahan, or the diary of Babur. So the text and painting were combined in the often on the same page. Yes, and this is a wonderful thing which is also there in Persian art and Islamic art in general. About what kind of formal frisson this creates, I'll leave it to your imagination. You know, to see great calligraphy and then great painting together. Those books were luxury books. They were meant for the zanana and the private use of the emperor himself. Sometimes shared with the rest of some of the court, but these were for the privileged few, let's say. And this combination of calligraphy and painting is a treat to watch. Whenever I have looked at these pages, whether at the Bharat Kala Bhavan or in collections in Bombay or abroad, I'm amazed by each folio that one holds up in one's hand. So there is an anonymous question. How do you think the genre of miniature painting has been updated in contemporary times? I'll answer this question with a little attention. This is very, I think, relevant. With the coming of photography, which was adopted by the royal courts enthusiastically in Rajasthan, in particular, so painting and also the reduced resources of the Rajas meant that they could not hire painters, but the popularity of photography really was a death blow to the miniature painter. But this has been it has never been lost completely. In Mewar, in Udaipur, great paintings are executed till the middle of the 1900s, so 20th century. And in all these places, whether it's Mewar or in Udaipur or Jaipur, Jodhpur, and some thikanas around, certain workshops have continued to turn out work, maybe for the bazaar, maybe for the tourists, maybe for someone's house like my own. I might, since I like miniature painting, I would buy it from a museum shop. So this has continued almost in a bazaar form. But in Lahore, at the National College of Art, from the 40s and 50s, courses in miniature painting were introduced, and wonderful work has been done in Lahore. Many of the artists have moved out of Pakistan for different reasons, but I can name some of them: Shazia Sikandar, Imran Qureshi, Saira Wasim, Nusrat Latif, Aisha Khalid. I have seen many of these works in private homes in Lahore and in some other capitals. They tend to move away from figure painting, which is the main thing in Indian miniature painting, towards greater abstraction, and they have more in common with abstract art of the West. but they have kept the format, the painting on vasli, thick paper like cardboard, and using the same pigments. It's quite wonderful, the revival in Pakistan particularly. And I'm a great admirer of the Singh twins who live in England. The sisters who always work together. They have taken inspiration from Indian miniature painting. A lot of contemporary Indian artists and Pakistani artists were inspired by Indian miniature painting, such as Ghulam Muhammad Sheikh and others. And there are very good painters still working. I know Vijay Sharma in Chamba. In Jaipur, I know some painters. I mean, I don't want to mention too many names. Some people will feel left out. Who turn out very good copies. In India, particularly, it's the copies. But in Lahore and in other centers, contemporary versions, contemporarization, and evolution of miniature painting has occurred. Asad, what do you think? Anytime?
I think, Professor Chabria, I mean, thank you for sharing such a wonderful, interesting, beautiful presentation. I truly agree with you. This is a 101. We need a 2.0 and many to follow. I think you packed so much in such a short time. But what a vision and what a learning it was. A big thank you to our participants. We had over 500 people register for this session. So thank you for joining us in our programs. For our Avid Online. I mean, I know we are only, the online version is only a year old, but it wouldn't make sense for us to do this if it wasn't for you. Our next live session is going to be a brand new series that we are launching called Cultural Capitals, the Future Legacy of Indian Cities. And we're starting with the city of Hyderabad, which will be on Thursday, the 22nd of April. We have many, many more interesting programs lined up. So stay tuned. Just follow us on social media or check us out on our website. Again, Professor Chabria, thank you so much for such a wonderful session.
You're welcome.
I look forward to a continued association. Have a lovely evening and good night. And remember that learning never stops. Thank you.